If nature and nurture are so intertwined, how could we possibly study the effects of one over the other? How can we figure out which behaviors are due to nature or, more attributed to nature and which are due more to nurture? Now, one way we can do this is to look at children who were adopted, because adoption studies compare those adopted children to both their biological, so their genes, parents that share similar DNA, with their adoptive parents. So these are parents that share more of the environment, the nurturing upbringing. So this kind of allows kind of a glimpse into how those two different components might be working if you can identify different traits or different conditions that maybe are present in one set of parents over the other, and you can kind of determine maybe how that trait might have arisen. However, can you think of perhaps some problems with this approach? Do you think adoption studies are like the be-all end-all perfect way of figuring out the differences between genes and environment? So one kind of hesitancy or piece of caution you might have when looking at adoption studies is the fact that the environments are unintentionally pretty similar, because adoptive families tend to have many characteristics in common due to the screening process, the background investigations, home inspections. In order to pass those various things, the adoptive parents likely have a lot of similar characteristics in their population, more so than, for instance, biological families. If biological families didn't have to pass all these different screens, there's more variation in what the different traits and different behaviors might look like in biological parents. So as a result, heritability might appear to play a greater influence because the environment is more similar, so it's a little bit less accurate. So instead of adoption studies, or maybe a slightly better way of getting about this, kind of avoiding that self-selection bias in adoption, um, is using twin studies. So twin studies are used to, again, try to evaluate those relative contributions of both genes, your nature, and the environment, how they were nurtured. And scientists get a little clever in how they do this. So they look at the changes, they look at the differences between identical twins, so monozygotic twins, meaning that they came from one egg that was split, so they share 100% of their genes with their twin, versus fraternal twins, or dizygotic, meaning they have two eggs, meaning they share about 50% of their DNA. So we can use this knowledge of their DNA and their genes to our advantage. So for instance, maybe you have your twins that were raised in the exact same environment. So same amount of attention, same amount of love and support. So you can look at, if nurture is kind of held constant, what the effects of having maybe 50% of your genes differing are. Or for instance, there have been some really cool cases of like twins who were separated at birth. So maybe they share 100% of their DNA. Nature is held constant, but their nurture, their environment is really different. So it allows you to kind of sort of disentangle them a little bit. So kind of just overall, we can measure what we call the concordance rate between the twins, which is the probability that a trait that you observe in one person will be seen in the other person. So for instance, it's the type of thing like if one twin has a reading disability, for instance, what is the probability that their twin will also have that reading disability? So this graph is showing you, for instance, on the x-axis, different conditions or disorders, and on the y-axis, the concordance rate from 0, so 0 probability the other twin will have it, to a full 100% probability. And these two bars are split based off monozygotic or identical twins and dizygotic or fraternal twins. So what you can see here, and one of the takeaways scientists use, is that since the concordance rate for a lot of these conditions, like reading disability or major affective disorder, etc., are so much higher in identical twins than they are in fraternal twins, that kind of hints that there's a larger influence of genetics on that particular condition. So these are kind of ways by comparing identical to fraternal twins to disentangle the role that genetics has on influencing that trait.